Hello and welcome to another episode of Pokémath. Today I am joined by no other than the lovely Ives. Welcome, Ives.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me.
So what are we going to do today? We are going to talk about how it is to be a Pokemon TCG judge. Well, TCG judge or maybe just a judge. I know you probably tried a lot of things, so we're just going to talk about all these kind of like, how is it behind the scenes? And I don't know about you, but I've been around a long time, but you've been around even longer. Like, how did you get into all this, Eve? When did it all start?
Oof, it's been a long time. I mean, just judging alone, I've been doing it for 21 years
Okay, that was
and
even longer
counting.
than I expected, I must say.
Yeah, I actually started following Pokemon even before Pokemon came to America. Back in the day, before internet, we're talking mid 90s. There used to be this thing called the fanzines.
I think I
Fans
think
would,
maybe give people a quick roundup. So yeah, I know you're from
yeah,
Mexico, but not everybody knows
yeah.
that and where you were
Oh, right, right,
stationed there.
right.
All right.
So I'm trapped in a place called Mexico, in Mexico City, which is the capital. And we're trapped in a funny place because we are very close to the United States. So a lot of the things that culturally hit the States get here, but not as quickly. So we have a little bit of a lag on some of those things. And well, Pokemon started here in America in late 90s. So by mid 90s, when it started being released in Japan, we started to get a little bit of news from them, but internet was not like it is today. You couldn't access information as easily as you can today.
Oh, it was not like
So,
on the same day for sure as you see today a lot.
or pages, there were just no content. There were not servers for people to post things. You had to kind of know where to look and what you were looking for. So it was very hard to get information. So one of the easiest ways that people had to know about upcoming things was at conventions or stores. The groups that had the most information would kind of gather and write what they call a fanzine, which is basically just they would just tape or just get some pieces of pages that they have typed out or anything like that
Yeah.
with information of upcoming stuff. No graphics, no nothing,
Hmm.
just Xerox paper.
Hmm.
But that's how I first started hearing about Pokemon back in the mid 90s. So
Oh,
let's say 96 roughly. And they were talking about this craze that was overtaking Japan, Pokemon, which was a weird concept because it was reminiscent of Final Fantasy in that it's a turn-based strategy RPG, but it was a light version, more geared toward younger children,
Mhm.
not as complicated. Instead of having multiple actions per character, every character only had four possible actions, but you had a plethora of characters, 151 at the time. And I was intrigued because I was a big fan of Japanese RPGs at the time. And it would take a couple of extra years for it to get into America. So by late 98, I think that the game released around September or something like that. I got it for Christmas for that year.
Oh,
And I
did
was
you go
completely.
red or blue? Did you go red or blue?
That's a funny one because I wanted red. Red is one of my favorite colors.
Hmm.
I wanted red badly, but we couldn't get a hold of red. Red was a better selling game than blue was.
Hmm.
And so they got me blue. And my first version, which still is with me, is my blue version. And for the first 6 or 7 generations, I always started with a fire starter Pokemon. So having a blue was kind of like a weird situation, but I grew to love it.
Oh, I can say I started red, but that was because my brother got blue. So my parents found it easy. Okay, there's two colors. You get red,
Yeah.
you get blue. Job done, right? But how did this did this introduce you to Pokemon? But that's yeah, that's long ago. We're talking decades, right? But
Yeah,
how
we're
did you get like into the card game, like really into the card game? How did that happen?
oof, it's a bit of a process, but originally, once I was a fan of the show and I was a fan of the video game, which I was first deeply into video game. That was my thing, the video game, not the cards. I was already doing a little bit of card games. Magic at the time, well, still is a very big game, but I wanted to get deeper into that one. I decided that I wanted to collect some of the Pokemon cards. Originally, everyone starts in what I call the Pokemon Spiral of Doom, in which you get one thing. Yeah, you know this story. Like
Oh
everyone
yeah,
has
oh
this
yeah.
version.
It's too familiar.
Yes, I'm only going to be collecting my favorite Pokemon. Then it starts becoming I'm only going to be collecting my favorite type. I'm only going to be collecting my two favorite types. I'm only gonna be assembling a single deck to play,
Mm.
and you go from there. Which is funny though, is that the first pack that I opened from base set, the rare card, was Imposter Professor Oak, which was kind of foretelling.
Was Imposter
But
Professor Oak base set?
yeah, the basic one, not the Imposter Professor Oak's Revenge, which is
Ah,
from
okay, yeah,
Rocket.
that was the one I messed it up with. I'm not very good when we go that far back because my first set that I opened a pack from was EX Emerald. Then you see how far you jump up there.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a gap. But yeah, I mean, I didn't like the card at the time because I thought like, oh my God, the bootleg professor. But now I think it's hilarious. I think it was quite telling at the time.
It was a future sight maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like you come a long way since then. Like heck, yeah. I met you in 2008 in Florida. That was the first time I
Yes.
ran into you. I got introduced by one of our common friends, Heidi. She pulled over this Mexican dude. Like, yo, Stefan, you can talk with this guy. And it's like, and then here comes an Eves. And I was like, what's an Eves? And then well, yeah, my life forever changed.
Oh, that's so nice of you. I have heard that a lot of people have a difficult time like first getting into contact with me, that I'm kind of weird,
we
but
all
not
we
in
all
a bad
like
way.
Pokemon, right? So
True, very true. But that is an experience. Like I can be a little bit active and that I can be a little too energetic. And some people like, what just happened? And like, you've been eeped.
that is indeed. And now we see you so often at judging events, right? And now I recently saw you at Professor Cup, or well, virtually at least. You're always around. Eves is always there somehow. And
I
also
try.
when we still at real life events, which we hopefully will get back sooner than
Oh,
later, then
please.
oh yeah, then we're gonna see Eves around again. I hope so. But how did you
Me
become?
too.
How did you become a judge? Like how does anyone become a judge?
Oh, well, that's a very nice story. I like to tell this story a lot because the first generation of judges for Pokemon were usually the parents of the children who were playing in most places.
So
That's what you have.
where's your kid then?
That's where I'm getting at. And that's the natural progression of the Pokemon judging worldwide. You just go back to see historically the guys that are like the older professors and the ones that the more legendary ones, so to speak. And in Mexico, we didn't have that first generation. Pokemon went straight to the kids and it didn't go through the parents. So we didn't have that. Our first generation was what I consider the second generation worldwide, which is the professional players requiring judges for them to have a reliable judging. So what happens there is that, and this is something that happened to you to a degree, I believe, in that pro players tend to know the rules so well, you become so immersed into the game that you are more knowledgeable than 99% of the people around you playing casual. So in a lot of cases, you dip your toe into judging just by virtue of what you know about the rules and all those kind of things. And you realize that you kind of like it. And you start to go deeper and deeper because you have these extra knowledge on the game that other people don't have, both from being a competitive player, but also about knowing about the rules. And you start to go deeper and deeper. And again, it's a little bit of a process. But in my case in particular, there was an extra layer to that one. And it was that I had a little bit of a falling out with the situation. Back before the Pokemon Company International draft back Pokemon, there used to be, you probably know about them, the STF, the Super Trainer Showdowns,
Yeah.
which which were kind of like a version of Worlds. Not quite as Worlds. I know that the second one is considered the first Worlds. For me, it's a little bit different. The first one was just mainly an US and Japan thing, but the second one was an international rendezvous of players. And at the time I was playing lots, I had been the highest ranked player in Mexico for 2.5 years, and I was top 10 in the world in ranking at the time. So I was kind of expecting to get an invitation for that one. I was dreaming about it. I was playing every tournament that I could. I was accruing every possible point. And when the invitations went out and the people who were going to be playing at were called upon, I sent an email to Wizards, who at the time was handling the whole situation.
Yeah.
And I asked, hey, how come that I didn't get an invitation if I am one of the highest ranked players in the world? And they replied with a very honest email in which they pretty much said, we don't have any reliable organizer or judge in Mexico doing Pokemon. So as far as we know, you could be running the tournaments in your basement by yourself. So
Hmm.
yeah, that
Oh,
was a
that's harsh.
real
That hurts.
fail.
Oh God, yeah.
So I made a little bit of a bow at that point, and I decided very much in very anime style that I would never let a Mexican player that deserved a shot at Worlds to be denied because there was not someone reliable enough around to justify an invitation to them. And it was funny because we didn't have to wait that long between the time from the second Super Turner Showdown to the time in which we started with Worlds with the Pokemon Company. It was just a couple of years. It was a very long distance that we just breached in a couple of years.
Yeah, I'm like the first Worlds was that '04,
Oh
2004?
four, oh
Yeah,
four.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that was in Orlando also, right?
Yes. In Disney. Well,
Oh yeah,
Disney World.
oh yeah, in Disney World because I know the second one Orlando in '08 was close by. It was not in Disney.
Yeah, we used to have those. World used to be for a number of years in or around the parks.
Yeah.
Disneyland was one as well. I used to love that one. After the tournament, we would just go to downtown Disney to have fun.
Oh, that sounds absolutely amazing. But that so you became a judge simply out of like you didn't want this to happen to anybody else that would have a
Yeah.
shot of becoming the next Mexican contender at Worlds. And how does one then start? Like I know today you just go on Pokemon.com, you take a test, and whoop you do, you may get a basic certificate. But what about back then?
Back then, it was a little more difficult. It was a hard time because Pokemon was the smaller child, so to speak, of Wizards. So there was not as much interest in promoting the judging side of Pokemon for them. So back in the day, you would start with them. It was fairly similar to how you would go about becoming a Magic judge. And from there, you would have levels the same way as you have with Magic. Actually, it was funny because there were two levels to Pokemon back then. It was a Professor and Master Professor. And you'd basically get them by judging a number of tournaments. So by the time that they were done with Pokemon, all of the Master Professors were grandfathered into TPCI's program. Well, they contacted us and, hey guys, we're trying to keep this alive. Do you want to be a part of it? And we were just grandfathered into the program, and we were the first points of focus, especially internationally, to try to capture or recapture a lot of the people that we were losing because after Wizards lost the game, there was a lot of people thinking that Pokemon was done for, at least the trading card game, which clearly is not the case.
Well, yeah, evidently we're still around today, right? And even bigger than ever, I think.
Oh
And
yeah, and
yeah,
still growing.
it's amazing. Like it gone really far. Like, but yeah, wow, yeah. I when I started and I became a professor myself, for instance, I didn't know about this master professor thing. I think that was already gone at that time, right? That was when Pokemon Company already had it at that point.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what
The
happened?
like we started back in judging. I think I started judging my first sanctioned tournaments were probably around the 2000s because I remember that by the end of 2000s they printed Neo Genesis and we were already giving those as prizes. Unofficially, I'd say that probably started late 99, mid 2000s. So yeah, it's been a long time.
For that's been yeah, and then we all know about the big well, let's call it a downfall or fallout or just the overtaking when it went from Wizards until well, what we have still today, TBCI, right? Um,
Yeah,
but
it's kind of
how
funny.
did that change? Because you were judge already, and then yeah, somebody new came and took it.
Yeah, and it was difficult because Mexico was never kind of a focus for Wizards. So some of the official stuff that we did, we ended up doing them more with the official distributors of the product here in Mexico and Latin America. So we had a couple of large, really large tournaments that were sponsored by they were official mostly because they were run by the distributor. So Wizards really never had too much of an interest to do anything Pokemon in Mexico. So at that time, when we started working with the Pokemon Company, but back then it was Pokemon USA Inc. It was not Pokemon International yet. And what happens then is that we started running pre-releases and smaller tournaments. The first qualifier for Worlds for Mexico was in '04, and it was not really a nationals, it was a gym challenge.
Yeah.
Um, it was the largest Pokemon event in Mexico, obviously, because we were giving out trips for Worlds.
Were there nationals that year as well, or were Gym Challenge just the qualifier event?
The US did have a nationals. That was technically the first national I attended, the US Nationals in Ohio in '04. and that was a lot of fun. But yeah, most qualifiers at the start were like that. Internationally speaking, they wanted people from other parts of the world, but nationals was a little bit of an investment. So they started with gym challenges in some places. Some markets did get national championships. It varied from region to region. By the
Okay.
second year, in '05, it was more standardized. So we did have a nationals in Mexico from '05. I ran nationals in Mexico from '05 all the way to '16, or when we
Yeah,
started doing regionals.
yeah. I think that the last year we had nationals as we knew them was 16 indeed.
Yeah,
And
I think so.
yeah, and I think the first national I played was '05. Like I participated as a player, and I learned the game like what 3 weeks before. Just oh, there's nationals, let's go. That's
More than enough.
one hell of a journey though. One hell of a journey. But so we know what got you into judging, but how and we already get the feeling that a lot of things changed, and now we have different, of course, still different levels. We have our challenges. Well, let's see if we get them back the same way. But well, pre this whole pandemic situation, we had challenges. We had the cups, which you can run in the stores, and then we went up to SPEs or regionals mostly, and then we had these internets. And I know you've been affiliated with various levels of event, all the way up to worlds and all the way down to the small challenges. How is it? How is it to be part of the staff of such a large event like an internets?
It's interesting because, oddly enough, internets are large events, but we were already primed. Regionals tend to be sometimes larger than internationals, but particularly because places like the Australia International it has a very good attendance for the region, but regionals in the States are massive. So by the
Oh
time
yeah,
that we started running the internationals, the regionals in the US had already gotten to the range of thousands of players attending. That made it a completely different type of tournament to tackle. It's funny because internationals are like mini worlds, and the way in which I approach them is very similar, in which we're trying to put on a great show for people to have fun. It's not only a tournament, which regionals is more geared towards. Regionals are more for the hardcore player, and we approach them and we tackle them as such. But with internationals, we try to put on a lot of things on the side for people to be able to have multiple ways of having fun. Nowadays, some regionals have other things in on the side. They have like much like some video games or other kind of things. But the important part is still the main event. But when it comes to those other events, there's so much stuff going on, and I love it because of that. Stuff like the Pokemon Center stuff at Worlds and
oh,
having the exclusive items from there. And every international has a flavor from the country that it is done at. Uh, Kudos to, for example, Brazil has they really know how to put their flavor into it, and the Oceania one as well is very different and unique. I love the interaction that we have with judges there. But especially what I liked about these large events is the different preparation because regionals are a weekend thing. You start participating in them around Friday, and by Sunday afternoon you're done. While the internationals and worlds tend to be week-long events, we arrive on Tuesday or Wednesdays, and we start preparing and having meetings and just making sure that we are ready to tackle the challenge that is coming across for the weekend. And it just comes to show the real large scope that these events have gotten. There are massive events that require so many moving parts for them to work properly, and that separates them, in my opinion, from a regional. That's like because it's not the size of the people that are attending. It's not the number of attending players. It's about all the moving parts around them that makes them much more complicated, and in a lot of ways, kind of hypnotizing to look at in big picture terms. So that's where I would kind of draw the line between these events and as what it comes about it, what's the feel about those ones? I really like the feeling of being a part of a team working towards a really big and important role. It's very emotional. I've seen a lot of judges break down and shed a tear sometimes when we are at Worlds, and they or even at an IC, and they have these videos at the start in which they hype up the players, and there's just so much energy and electricity going around that even some stuff just break down and shed a tear or two.
It's I can only say, like, also even as a player, when you are received at Worlds or IC or Open, it's an amazing show. And for anybody who's listening or seeing this out there, if you haven't tried this yet, just do yourself a huge favor. Get your ass to an IC or Worlds as a participant or just to spectate. It is fantastic. It's a fantastic experience.
Yes, there's so much power going on and
Mm.
about. And you made a very interesting point. And I see your worlds. For me, ICs are mini worlds. Since not everyone can experience worlds because logistically speaking, they might be very far from you or you require a visa to go into the States or something like that.
Of course, that's a big difference because as a European, for instance, it's getting a visa to the state is not a big difficulty, or at least, well, at the time of last Worlds, of course, it's not a big
Hmm.
difficulty. And the next Worlds, if it's still going to go through, it's postponed again. It's going to be in
I hope
London.
not.
It's going to be in London, which is, well, strangely enough, it's going to require a visa this time still because of well, recent events, and
Yeah,
it should be easy enough though. But if you have an IC around, like there's going to be in Oceania, there's also one in Brazil typically, there's one in the States and one in Europe, which has been in Germany the last couple of times. It's do yourself a favor, get yourself there. It's amazing. It's
yeah.
absolutely amazing. And that brings me to my next question, Yves. Suppose now you wake up a morning, it's the day of an IC, and you pick an IC. Can you walk me through a day?
Sure. And as we mentioned, there's like this duality of big events, ICs and regionals. In the case of ICs, you've already had most of your meetings with your team before. Um, So you've already been in contact with them for a couple of days. You've gone through the documents, all the protocols, all the procedures. You've already gone over the rulings that you think might come up. You've gone over the decks that might be seeing a lot of play on this day or the few days. So all the preparations that is difficult to get done in the morning of the event of other events, this in this one, it's already tackled. So we're there early. We're there around 6 in the morning, which is still a little bit difficult. The judge grind is real. Uh, and ICs tend to be 3 day events, so it's not as hard as it used to be, especially comparing it to regionals in which you have to get most of it done by Saturday. In these cases, you get up early around 6 in the morning, or you have to be there between 6:30 in the morning. You get a light breakfast. At least I try to get something. Most people are having a cup of a cup of coffee or something like that. Maybe a baguette or some sort of light bread. You don't want to eat very heavy before an event. You just want to get something on your system so you can keep on running. But if you get too much food early in the morning, you will get drowsy early on the tournament. Same reason why you don't get a lot of carbs early in the morning. If you can get some protein in, it's good because they are slow release. So you will start to process them throughout the day.
Here we're
And
getting some nutrition facts on the table here, everybody. This is good.
it's very important because you want to be in the best possible shape that you can for the tournament.
Hundred
Same thing
percent.
with hydration. Staying hydrated is very good because you are talking lots in the tournament all the time with players, with parents, with everyone. So you have to keep yourself hydrated to be at the best shape possible. The workday starts from 6, but you end around 9, 10 p.m. So you are talking about 16 hours work days. You are going to end up dead by the end of the day. You need to make sure that you have your breaks. You need to have your food. So yeah, there are some places in food is included with the hotel. I distinctly recall eating lots in Brazil. I should not eat as much in before that one, but the food's so amazing. But yeah,
I
after
thought
that,
I thought you were gonna say Toronto because I've seen how Eves acted at Toronto. Oh,
poutine. I love poutine. I'm a big poutine fan, but that's the problem. They don't have poutine at the hotels in Toronto. So I know McDonald's have it and they have 24-hour McDonald's, but getting poutine for breakfast is a little bit difficult before the tournament. And that's not a problem in Brazil. So uh, I'm just a fan of food in general.
it's
But
it's
it's good.
it's all these things here. But now, so you're judging through a day and everything like that. Is there a particular point where you say like, oh, this is actually a little hard. Like this is actually really demanding.
There's some points during the tournament that you have to be careful or that you can use your experience to put everyone in a better position. For example, the at the start of the day, everyone's going to be a little bit drowsy. So you want to gather them to go over a little bit of the important notes for the day. And you want to have them up a little bit, get their energy up and start getting them in shape. But before the players come in, because you don't want players to watch the judges yawning and just in general, not lazy, but just like not at the best of their capabilities. So the other moment at the start that you want to be proactive at is before the player meeting when everyone's just walking into the hall. The judges tend to be some of the more recognizable faces that we have. So players will gravitate towards them for any questions that they might have. So instead of having them all just sitting down at a table and waiting for everything to start, locate them into positions in which people can reach them and ask them questions and like, hey, how about this or how about that? And that will help both the judge to start getting into the flow of the tournament, but also for players to feel that they are getting catered to and that we're ready to start. The next important point that I would like to mention is after the lunch break, when there's a lunch break, or after round 3-ish, when people are starting to eat. Because once people start to eat and get food into their system, they tend to be a little bit drowsy and they make more mistakes. We have kind of realized that after the round that we have breaks and stuff, there's an uptake into the amount of penalties that the players make because they are a little bit tired. So you want your judges to be more active at that point. Um, any round for juniors is a difficult round. Anyone. I have the utmost respect for the judges that primarily judge juniors because there's so many calls going on all the time. It requires so much energy, and the kids are just jumping all over the place, and they are doing all sorts of. It's really difficult. Um, and
I
probably
heard that before.
oh, trust me, and you had brothers and players, and you were a young player. Juniors is really difficult as an age group. You require a very specific skill set to be able to come out of that one alive at the end. I think that also around the time of dinner, around 6 p.m., 7 p.m., when you are going into round 7 or round 6, 7 of masters and stuff like
Yeah.
that, that's when people start to wind down. When they are having their second meal of the day, when and players are starting to drop. It's a weird situation because you're seeing the tournament shrink in size. A lot of people are dropping. Uh, the top players are congregating at the top tables, but
Yeah.
at the same time, your judges are a little bit tired. And talking this more in a capacity of like a head judge or a team lead, in which you need to keep them at their best shape because this is when we need them the most. The last few rounds are when most of the shenanigans happen, the stuff that you really want to keep an eye on. So at that point, you need to think more proactively again in terms of how to handle them, having the talks with them, letting them go for food. That's one of the most difficult parts. Not so much the very end, but those last couple of rounds, especially because juniors and seniors have probably finished by then, and you just kind of bump some of them and start kind of like bouncing off some to get some rest. But everyone's tired at that point. Some have eaten, some have not. It's just probably the most difficult part of the tournament.
But that is, yeah. You only as a player you see this and you just expect that the judges are just machines. They're just there for you the whole time. They're around and you see them all the time. It's just yeah, all these things behind it. There's really a lot to it. And now,
Oh, that
I
yeah.
yeah, I hear about a J of a judge and everything, but over all the years you've been judging, is there an event that springs to mind, or a game in particular that springs to mind? You just like one of a favorite memory of those, or one of many maybe.
Mm. It's been many years, so it's difficult to just narrow it down to one. I want to say that you remember a lot of your firsts. I very strongly remember my first national, my first worlds. That's a very nice memory. Oh, 04. The first time I was head judge at Worlds, the first time that you judge an international event or a transcontinental event. There's a feel to it. The first time that you travel 30 or 40 hours to an event,
Oh,
those are kind of like the events. And oddly enough, I'd have to say that the matches that you remember the most are the ones in which you would have done something different. Those carry out, like a lot of people think that being a judge is so easy. You just end the tournament, go home, and you never think about stuff. But most of the judges that I know and that I've been around, when there's something that we are not sure or that we hope that we can have done differently, that kind of haunts us for a long time. Not necessarily mistakes, but and that's a good thing because that gives you a perspective on what never to do again or what to look for, particularly in cases in which maybe I should have asked this question or in general, in terms of tournaments, you remember the first, and in terms of matches, you remember the ones that there was something that you might have done a little bit different.
That's also it's not the answer I expected, I must admit. This is really interesting to hear. But yeah, you judged everything. You've been everywhere by now. Like, is there anything you're even missing? Like, do you still did you achieve it all?
I want to say that I have achieved most of what I've wanted to accomplish from Pokemon. When I started, when I converted full time from player to judge, I dreamt of a day in which we would have Pokemon Nationals in Mexico in the World Trade Center. We had that in '05. Um, and I wanted to be a judge at Worlds. I had that in '04. I wanted to be a head judge at Worlds at Masters. I had that at '13 in Vancouver, the first non-US Worlds to boot. Uh, I've been invited. I think I'm the only current judge that has been invited to every single IC and Worlds. Um, and I've staffed over 50 nationals, over 50 regionals, 16 worlds.
That's amazing. Like that's wow. So,
But there's
mhm.
always a but when you
Oh,
start with the nice stuff. I wanted to do more. Like the thing that I like doing is having more places, visit more places because of Pokemon. And I've done a lot of Europe. I did nationals in Europe. I've done a lot of regionals in Europe. I've seen you there quite some time. But I missed out a little bit on Asia. We used to have Thailand and Philippines and Malaysia, and I wish I had taken more time for those ones because now they're part more on the Pokemon company. They're more associated with the Japan and Korean side of things.
yeah, they took a step that direction here, not
Yeah,
long ago now.
and that was a little sad. I would really like doing, for example, staffing a Japanese tournament or a Korean one or a Malaysian or something that I haven't done before. I wouldn't call them like I wouldn't say that it's realistic because they are run by a different OP group. But I wouldn't mind trying at one time, and I missed on at least on some of the Southeast Asia ones. But who knows?
Hey, it could change. It could all could change. We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah,
The future is unknown, right? And well, that leaves me just with you already went over like most memorable, and you even came with the like kind of like what you want. So you're way ahead of whatever I want to ask, and this just brings me to the final thing I would like to ask you. Like, is there anything like any piece of advice you can give anybody who wishes to become a judge? Like,
yes.
what if somebody wakes up and say, "I want to be a judge"? How do I do it? What should I do?
There's a lot that I would like to tell. I love talking with new judges and trying to explain to them things that I would have loved for me to know back in the day. The first thing is that there was a misunderstanding, I want to say, about what is to be successful as a judge. A lot of people think that being successful as a judge means becoming a head judge. And I think that that's been a big mistake, and we have a lot of judges being frustrated because they cannot reach those positions. I think that success as a judge means finding your calling inside the group and being able to develop yourself into that one and really reaching new heights. A lot of the program and a lot of the positions in the program have been created unwittingly by some people that were just so good at what they were doing, and to the point in which they like the people realize that hey, we need that kind of support at our tournaments, and some positions have been born out of that one and not necessarily looking to be a head judge. If your profile does not fit that metric, for example,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people have a very hard time with confrontation. And unfortunately, the head judge is going to be doing the disqualifications and most of the things that a lot of people wouldn't like to do. So I would tell every judge that's starting to kind of figure out what their strong points are and to work towards them to become an invaluable part of any team, not just blindly just go with the, oh, I just want to be the head judge or I want to be the judge lead at this or that tournament. because those positions in particular are so few and have already been populated by a lot of people that have a lot of experience that starting right now would not really lead you to a realistic situation. Finding out what you're really good at, finding out what you can really improve and help the game for. There are still a lot of areas that we haven't fully explored and that I'm sure that we can do a lot better. Like we need a lot of more specialization when it comes to deck list and deck checking.
Hmm.
We have improved a lot in the last few years, but I think that that's a field in which we can still improve. Sites have seen a massive amount of increase in quality and protocols in the last few years. Uh, a lot of people have a really weird idea about sites, about it not being as prestigious as a main event. That's completely ridiculous. It's as, if not more important, because you're trying there to make people fall in love with the game. And for them to temper the expectations, there was a feeling a few years ago from many judges that there was no point in judging because all the good positions were taken.
Hmm.
So be patient. I think that in Pokemon, it's all about patience. If you continue working hard every day, if you continue sharpening your skills every day, if you really have that passion to be of help to the community, the opportunities will come. Don't get disheartened. Networking, that's a huge one. If a lot of people feel very not confident about touching base with other professors. That's something the stuff like the professor cups are really good at,
Yeah.
meeting other professors. But just networking is always a good thing. Say hello to a professor like, hey, I'm Tommy, and I've been judging, and I would like some advice from you. Like, whenever I get a mail or a message from any judge that's asking me for a question or they have like a doubt or something, and I'm always really happy to help. And most of the guys that have experience love to share that experience because there's nothing else to do with that experience other than to share it. That's what I think that I would tell the starting judges right now.
That is really, really helpful, Reeves. Like, really. And maybe, well, when you start out, maybe you get Eves yourself. Well, you don't know. You never know. At some point, you just run into you, right?
Pray that
No.
you don't.
No, and with that said, I would like to say thank you so much for your time here, Eves, and thanks for telling all these nice stories and nice advice, all this good piece of advice. It's amazing to hear, and I hope some of you out there have been inspired and you heard some useful things here. And I would like just one more time, thank you so much for coming here today, Eves.
Thank you very much. I'm always happy to be around here.
I'm really, really happy you had the time. And with that said, this was another episode of Pokémath. My name is Stefan Eriksson, and until next time,
Bye
bye.
bye.